what we learned in that first wave of Insurtech that's so important to us is a belief that the independent agents will persist and will be a major part of the insurance industry for as long as we can see forward.
This is the Insurance Technology Podcast, where we bring interesting people from across the insurance ecosystem to discuss and debate technology's impact on the industry. Join us each episode for insights and best practices from industry stewards and tomorrow's innovators. Now, here's your host, Reid Holsworth.
Welcome to the Insurance Technology Podcast. I'm your host, Reid Holsworth. In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Bill Devine from Travelers. Bill has been at Travelers for quite some time. He knows everybody in the industry. I've known Bill for quite a while. He's just an awesome individual. I recently spoke with him on stage, and it was just a fun time. Bill's a great dude. Stay tuned, because in this episode, we're going to really get into how Bill fell into insurance. Like everyone else, he fell into it. It's a pretty awesome story, so stay tuned. It's going to be great.
We're back with Bill Devine. I'm here in beautiful Hartford, Connecticut on a beautiful, I guess it's still winter day.
I think it's technically like the second day of spring or something.
Is it? Oh, is it really?
Yeah, technically.
Like it is getting nicer out.
There's it's Hartford and there's no snow on the ground, so it's springish.
I love Hartford, Connecticut. It's my favorite place in the whole wide world. You walk outside, you just breathe insurance. Just insurance everywhere. You go anywhere, get a cup of coffee, there's insurance people around all over the place. Insurance capital of the world. You know, it's funny. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. Like, I don't know. I should know this. Like, why Hartford, Connecticut? Do you know why? Like, I was a big group yesterday, and nobody really knew why Hartford. Why are there so many insurance companies in Hartford? I don't know.
So I think just like any other industry, certain industries develop affinity for certain geographies, and once you get rolling, it's easy to find talent. And not to get too deep or like backing up too far, but like pre-World War II and pre-GI Bill and VA loans and things like that, people didn't move, right? Like, so
it's true.
So like multiple and you can see it walking the halls at Travelers or any of our competitors or our friends in the insurance industry around Hartford. Like, you've got multiple generations of people. We've got a wonderful woman in small commercial whose family is big at Liberty Mutual. Like, it's like there's tons of stuff like that. But it goes back to the fact that it's only in the last generation or two people actually moved around the country. That's how two idiots like us that are from Southern California are now having this conversation in Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah.
But right, like, people didn't move, so the industries moved to where people that had the talent were. So I spent a couple of years in Syracuse, New York, and Syracuse was an insurance capital at one point.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But it's just like there's these little pockets of places where certain industries grow up, and then they just so it's carried over. But yeah, it's back from when people didn't relocate and you just had multiple generations. And we used to have massive infrastructure here. There's a radio station, WTIC, here in Hartford.
Yeah.
That Travelers owned that radio station to give weather alerts out to their employees on when there was inclement weather. That's how big Travelers was at one. I mean, you think about like just how insane that is. We owned a radio station. They played music and stuff, but we owned a radio station.
Yeah,
and it still has the call letters of Travelers Insurance Company, Indemnity Company, TIC. So it's like that's just how big of an insurance town this is, which doesn't make it any more interesting, and is not really. Not really big on the come visit Connecticut tourism board, but I've lived here for almost 20 years now, and it's been a great place to raise a family. And if you like mountain biking and kayaking cross country skiing, a little bit of downhill skiing, I mean, you can't beat.
Oh, really? Nice.
It's beautiful. And I want to say there's a stat, like, and I'm probably wrong, but we have more golf courses per capita than any other state.
Oh, no. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. No kidding. That's awesome.
So
a lot of insurance people.
But yeah, just lots of green space. And it's I always joke that Hartford, Connecticut is like, and you were walking around here last night, so you probably saw it. It's like if somebody took 20 square blocks of a big city, like a Chicago or New York, and dropped it in the middle of nowhere. And when those 20 square blocks ends, it's like nothing. You're like, why is there a 20-story building here and then a vacant lot right next to it? Like,
yeah, totally.
California guys, right? Like sprawl.
It just doesn't end.
And Hartford went up It didn't go out. So it's literally so you could walk from one end to the other in a few minutes. In fact, if you're ever here, and I shouldn't plug the competitor, but one of my favorite poets, Wallace Stevens, was actually an underwriter at the Hartford.
Okay.
And there's actually an amazing walk that you can do from the Hartford to where he lived.
Oh, wow.
And each of the 13 stanzas of 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird are at a stop along the walk that he did every day, where he was an underwriting officer at the Hartford, to his home where he wrote all of his poetry.
That is so cool.
So it's like there's some cool stuff like that. And you kind of go by the Mark Twain house, the Mary Beecher Stowe house. So I mean, there's history everywhere. Almost to our detriment sometimes, but there's history everywhere, and it's kind of cool.
Somebody was telling me yesterday that Hartford, or Mark Twain moved to Hartford because he said Hartford is where it's going on, right? And then somebody was telling me that Hartford, Connecticut was actually much bigger than New York City at one point. And around that same time, apparently, this is what this person's saying. I can Google it, so whatever. But yeah, and so then obviously New York took off, and here we are at Hartford.
The home of not much of anything except insurance.
How many people are at Travelers worldwide?
So worldwide, Travelers is over 30,000 people.
30,000 people.
30,000 people.
That's so crazy.
It is, until we sit down. I had dinner with some folks from Accenture the other night. I think they have 600,000 worldwide, which is just unfathomable, right? That's the size and the reach of companies these days. But I mean, they're over 30,000 people. We're a Dow 30 company. We're a bellwether of the stock market for good and bad. And I mean, it's this is not where I expected to end up. That's just, it's the magnitude and just sometimes the enormity of being a part of something that's been around for so long and so big is just crazy.
Yeah. How long has Travelers been around?
So I'm going to butcher the date, but it's 1864 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's over 100 years. Yeah.
That's
well
awesome.
Well over 100 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We've got the Batterson desk here, where Mr. Batterson, the first CEO, hand wrote policies out and stuff like that.
So wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's, I mean, we have a historian here that actually gives tours. You can go up in the tower and see the peregrine falcon nest. It's so surreal. You guys have that at Ivan's, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome, man. It's huge footprint in the industry. I mean, Travelers is just a beast. And, I've said this, I think I said this in the last episode we did. Great partner. I mean, you guys have really doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on technology. You're doing a lot for the agents in that. And you just have a really great outlook on it, as opposed to some of our other friends that don't really share the same views, which we've talked about a bunch. But you guys are really embracing it, enabling it, and pushing it out for the better of the industry, which is awesome. And you sit in a unique position here at Travelers. Yeah. And so you see a lot. You see a lot of technology companies on the agency side as well as the carrier side. And like you said, dealing even with Accenture and some of these others.
And you guys keep buying up the ones that we like best. So we'll help us.
Keep them coming. They're working out well.
Good job, Taylor.
I know, right? Yeah, no, it's good. It's interesting though. I'd love to hear your views on it, because I'm kind of been off on this tangent lately. It's I'm not seeing a lot of new innovative things that are out there. There's stuff, right?
Yep.
But it feels like a lot of the innovation, and I don't want to say is drying up per se, but maybe it's just that there was just too much noise before, right?
Well, yeah, and I soapbox on this every once in a while, and I'm stealing from Bill Peroni, who I think does a great job on all of this too, and is a great friend. But we're really at the cusp of the third wave of Insurtech.
Okay.
Right. So the first wave of Insurtech was crazy, right? These were all the people that were coming in to beat us.
Mm-hmm.
And
right, totally.
And to be fair, your pre-Ivan's life was a little bit of that first gen Insurtech of you came in to beat the establishment.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yes.
Yes. Everything was about looking across and saying insurance people are dumb.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily disagree, that we have opportunity, But it was that insurance people are dumb, and we non-insurance people or light insurance people are going to jump in and show them how much better we can do this.
Yep.
And it was a disrupt model. It was a very Silicon Valley ideology of, it was the Uber Lyft, come in and break the model because we're not going to care about what came first.
Right.
And every company from that first generation has since gone away.
Yeah, in some shape or form.
Right. Like, and if they exist, there was a massive pivot likely.
Yeah.
And they've moved they're either now owned by the insurance industry, someone in the insurance industry, and in the best case, it's people like yourself, honestly, Reid, that have come in and now taken big roles in transforming the actual industry as opposed to just trying to disrupt it and break it.
Yeah,
which I love. I love that story. Or people that have just moved on to another industry.
It's very true.
Right, and that's really so much of what it is. And part of that in that first generation, my belief is our margins are so lousy relative to other industries.
Yep.
Like, there's just not a lot of money to be made in insurance at the transaction level.
Yeah.
At the aggregate, don't get me wrong, Dow 30 company, there is but at the individual transaction level, if you're going to start it is not where I would place my bet to be a carrier.
Yeah.
If I had capital, like moving into that side. And even on the distribution side, like there's a lot of just inertia on the distribution transformation side. Like, so many people talked about like digital distribution, online, but we've seen that pretty much plateau. That doesn't mean it's not going to move again, but
totally.
But like the independent agent has they actually are thriving and have grown now post this first big wave of disruption where companies were coming in from all over the place and we're like, oh, we're gonna kill these agents because they don't know what they're doing. And it's like, well, it turns out there was something there.
Yeah.
And that magic is, and to me, that's the important part. And I'm kind of conflating the two topics, but our belief in that, what we learned in that first wave of Insurtech that's so important to us is a belief that the independent agents will persist and will be a major part of the insurance industry for as long as we can see forward.
Well, every one of them, all those Insurtechs of that first wave you're talking about, I think every one of them, and I'm probably wrong. People listening, no, I do this, whatever. I get it. But like, generally speaking, most of them had to pivot, especially to leverage the IAs for distribution.
Exactly.
Oh,
totally.
And so they're all like, no, we're going to do it. And they spent millions, probably billions collectively.
Or they're owned by some global broker or things
exactly.
Like they've either folded in or they've gone away.
Yeah.
Like it's one or the other. They either became part of the industry or they went away. Yeah. And like you said, somebody listening to this is going to say, no, we're still out here, blah, blah. But then, so that's phase one of Insurtech. We're at the tail end, in my belief, of the second phase.
Yeah.
And that was people who came in and were actually part of the industry and saw opportunity. And so you were kind of a founder, you were like at the tail end of one and a founder of that second wave.
Fair enough.
People that were part of the industry that are like, hey, there's a problem and I can build something fit for purpose that can solve that problem.
Yep.
And our buddies Mike and Alan at Ask Kodiak are a perfect example of that. But there's so many of these guys in the second generation. They grew up through insurance.
Yep.
They took the best of Silicon Valley and this disruptive mindset. But instead of trying to break the industry, they looked at the industry and said, where are we broken? And tried to fix something. And I freaking love that. And Applied Ivans, you guys sucked up a lot of these companies because you could look across and see like, oh, this is fixing this problem.
Yeah.
Love that. Let's plug that in. This is fixing this other problem. Great. Let's plug that in. And these are companies that complemented the existing ecosystem as opposed to trying to say, well, let's just burn it all down and build a brand new ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And I love those. And so, I would say Tech Canary was probably at the cutting edge of that second wave of Insurtech.
Yeah.
The third wave of Insurtech hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And that's where my hypothesis, and again, stealing from Bill Peroni, but my hypothesis is so much investment has gone in on the Insurtech side to distribution capabilities, which at the end of the day is a small part of the overall premium.
Oh, yeah.
And there hasn't been nearly enough innovation and technology investment on the claim side, on the actual underwriting side, and these pieces that now you have to be an industry insider. You have to learn the industry and see the tech and understand it to be able to do. So somebody like yourself could be in the industry and build something as amazing as Tech Canary without having to have grown up in the industry.
Very true. Yes.
Right? Because you found a significant set of problems and said, I'm going to solve those.
Right.
That next set is now you're getting into like complex multivariate rating and fraud detection and things that are going to require data sets from the industry or industry aggregation to actually start to bring these next level of innovations. And I'm excited. And actually something you said when we were at the Big I conference on the main stage is I think ties into that, because I think you guys see where this is going too, is things like RQIs, policy admins, claim systems, the ability to interconnect all of that and start to bring, being able to connect an applied Ivan's Guidewire and start to see a full ecosystem.
Yeah, the whole stack.
That to me
fully
is
connected.
And the players that are going to, the next set of innovation in Insurtech, I think are going to be players that come in that help accelerate those types of connectivities.
Yeah. And for the audience, what we were talking about on stage at the Big I Insurtech Summit in Savannah was, I believe that in the not so distant future, there's going to be a merge of an agency management system vendor and a policy administration system. But a real one, a big one, not like they're going to go pick up Duck Creek's going to go pick up a small AMS. The bigs are going to come together in that. And when you start to think about those,
we have to use kind of generic names because you and I both are insider enough on too many of these.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
there's some SEC problems that we're right on the line of, sure.
But and you think about all of that interconnectedness and what you can do and streamlining the overall flow. I mean, that's massive. And then all the products and things that can be built around that, the ecosystem that can be built around that.
And the reason I think that's so important is if we look to other industries, right? And the buzzwords and the concepts that come out of other industries, that concept of platforms is huge everywhere. So much of the technology companies out there pivoted from innovation to are you a platform company? And I really think that there is aspects of that would fit nicely into our industry. And will be a big piece of this, and that kind of end-to-end platform piece.
What are your thoughts on some of these companies that are out there now that are kind of trying to stitch this together? And we can name names. There's different flavors of it. Like there's like an Uncork, right? Or there's like even like an insurance gig, like these types of things where they're trying to stitch it together. Uncork different than insurance gig in ways, but they are kind of trying to solve the same problems, right? And kind of to this point on the whole platform and where that really goes, I mean, are these kind of, I don't want to call them point solutions. I don't even know what you call them.
Yeah, it's almost like, are we band-aiding our way to creating a platform?
Right.
I want to be careful because I'm super impressed with some of the names that you threw out.
Yeah, 100%.
And the idea of these low-code, no-code platforms are going to be a critical piece of what we're talking about.
Right.
I don't think, though, that it's not big enough yet, at least, to actually do more than just kind of help us to better triage some of the mess we have.
Yeah.
Like you can build a really nice front end that floats above the mess. And with great orchestration, you can at least make it to a user feel like the mess we've got under the water. Was it the duck paddling? That idea of like, we can look smooth and elegant above the waterline with some of these solutions you're talking about.
Very true.
And have an absolute disaster under the waterline. And I think that's the first step towards what we're talking about. But I think it's going to take a lot more than that. It's going to take, my boss uses the term cleaning up the wires in the closet, right? We bought this weird house in Fountain Valley when I first got married, and pretty sure the guy had some kind of drug problem that we bought the house from. It might have been a bit of a tweaker. And so we had over 36 phone lines that were running through the house. And so I literally, I had this closet that you opened up and it was nothing but wire. And so when he uses this analogy of like needed to clean up the wires in the closet, it's like this idea of we just kept adding and adding and adding, and we don't take out, we don't clean up, we don't streamline and simplify. That's got to happen. But I think in the interim, companies like what you mentioned are helping make it less bad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll say about Uncork, a lot of people are using it for a lot of things, and no code, low code stuff is interesting. And, if you talk to those guys, they will tell you that you can build a full on policy administration system on their solution. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. I don't know if the industry is ready for that. And it's funny, I spent a lot of time with the Salesforce guys and Velocity and all of that. And
we were in some of those same meetings.
Oh yeah, I know. And it's I don't know. I don't know if the industry is going to shift like that anytime soon, especially with all of the dollars and the time that everybody's put into, I'm doing air quotes, digital transformation, right? And doing all of that. Are they going to rip and replace Guidewire, Duck Creek, so on and so on and so on and so on?
Well, from the vantage point of having done it multiple times in my career, it's expensive.
Yeah.
But worse than expensive, it's risky.
Yeah.
It's crazy risky.
Yeah, true.
You ever want to read a horror story, go and look at some of the accounts of large carriers and the write-downs they've had over the years in replacing policy admin systems.
Oh, it's
billions and billions and billions of dollars of waste across the industry. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. We all have messed up at one point or another.
Yeah.
And the CRM stuff, pre where Salesforce is today, was like the story of the 80s and 90s and all the disastrous CRM implementations. Policy admin was right up there. There's just as many insurance companies.
Yeah.
Billions lost.
It's crazy too. I've talked to countless people in the industry, and it's I'm over beers, how much does that cost, to do this thing they're working on? Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh yeah.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, writing the check to one of the said companies, right?
Yep.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. But then, like you said, you don't think about all the opportunity cost, everything that happens within the organization, the change management, all of it. It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
And who wants to do it?
And the other is, and some of my friends will cringe hear me say this, but I've said it to their face, is that part of the challenge is the consultancies.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
I love all my friends at Accenture, Deloitte, all these,
people are cringing right now.
They're amazing folks, but there is a place where some of these trends get driven from 100%. The people who profit from the needing to follow those trends.
Yeah.
And you can kind of look back with a historic lens, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone in particular, but you look back with a historic lens, and there was a race of everybody was rebuilding their policy admin and going to proprietary.
Yeah.
Then it was everybody needs to move to one of the vendors that you talked about. Now it's everybody needs to move to cloud. And the reality is there is truth to every one of those, and those were the right decisions at the time.
Yeah.
I think they may become more prevalent, and we may feel more pressure to do some of those things because there's a Greek chorus surrounding us telling us that that's the thing we need to do to be successful.
It's a machine, man. And hey, guys, I hate to break it to all of you. They are there to book and bill hours. That's what they do. But to be fair, they're not wrong.
No,
they're not wrong.
Nothing they're selling is wrong.
But it is a machine. It is absolutely 100%.
The urgency to buy might be a little higher but the coach counseling, the truths they're telling are the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The urgency may not quite be there. Trying to explain to people that I don't think we've ever sold an extra policy because of policy admin.
Yeah, right.
We didn't make one extra dollar premium.
Yeah.
Policy admin is something you do. It's like policy admin, billing, all these systems. You change those because you have to, not because you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking through it, kind of thinking out loud, as companies like Travelers and many others have done these big lift and shifts, and they've done the heavy lifting and are on these policy administration systems, maybe there is a good runway for all of these companies that are sitting on top and not necessarily cleaning the wires in the closet, but they're doing a really great job enabling it. I know, and I'll give a shout out to Uncork. I know a carrier that didn't have an API.
Yeah.
And they leverage Uncork to basically build and do all of that. And it's great. And they did it super fast,
right?
Within weeks, as opposed to years and going through all of this shit. They just plugged it in, bang, bang, boom, and it's done.
Right.
And they're using it literally every single day.
And there's a number of technologies like that can do similar things. And I totally agree with you, Reid. I think it's changing how we think about some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And what's exciting about it, and the API piece of it, I think, is what's most exciting about it is the move away from full stack solutions, mm-hmm. and being able to incorporate more fit for purpose solutions and microservices and all that kind of cool stuff. I mean, that's something we've been talking about for over a decade now, but mm-hmm. it's becoming more and more prevalent. And I think that's what's allowing more of innovation. And when I talk about that third wave of Insurtech, that's what's going to allow them to get into the ecosystem. Totally. And then the more we can clean up that ecosystem. Yeah. And there's some cool stuff going on. I mean, it's and I can only talk about the stuff I've seen, but I was out in Dublin a few months back at Guidewire's development center, and some of the stuff they're talking about with eventing frameworks and things like that, it's super cool. Yeah, these are those moves towards like what you can kind of see on the horizon already. Yeah, and I feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. Like, you don't need to move to Guidewire and you don't need to go to cloud, but hey, if you do, they have this really cool eventing framework that's going to allow you to do stuff that you haven't even imagined yet.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I'm seeing it. It's like, I think I said to somebody the other day, I feel like we're at a tipping point within this industry where everybody's been wrenching on this stuff for many years, and now they've done a lot of this wrenching over many, many years. They've done the transformation, this, that, and the other. Now they're actually able to execute on a lot of this stuff. And I'll speak for Applied. Applied's gone through this whole transformation, and rebuilding all their back end, doing all this stuff. And now we're starting to see it. We're seeing the fruits of that labor. But for a few years, it's like, everybody's like, oh, it's closed and you guys suck. And it's like, we know, we're working on it. I get it, God, but it takes time, right? But now, we're turning out products and innovation very quickly. Yeah. And I think it's the same for the industry, right? And even Guidewire and Guidewire is doing that. We're doing a lot with our partnership with Guidewire right now. They're actually doing a lot more, where a couple of years ago they were like, yeah, whatever, dude. Right. We're not really looking at that. But that's because their technology has advanced.
Absolutely.
Right. And now they're getting demands from all their carrier customers on, hey, now that we have this and it's done, we're ready for the next wave, I guess.
Yeah, right? I think that, and the other one that I think just can't be downplayed, and I know you guys have just done a ton of that at Ivans. We've done a lot at Travelers, definitely Guidewire and their go-to-market path. I mean, if you start to look at how we've matured our it's SDLCs or our software development, how we do the work has changed. Yep. And how we think about breaking things into smaller components, delivering iteratively. Everybody says agile, and we just don't have a better name for it. But all that mentality and that mindset shift, I think, is the other big unlock here that has allowed us to get to this. Because so much of the work that we do with you guys, for example, if we weren't both on those similar agile cycles, totally, and just I can every 2 weeks I can send you something new, you send something back to me in 2 weeks, and that type of pacing that would have been unheard of 3-5 years ago.
Exactly.
I would have gone away for 6 months, and then I would have given you a set of specs, and then you would have gone away for 6 months and come back, and a year later we'd be able to connect one agent for one product that they didn't even want to sell. Yeah. Now we're spinning this stuff fast. We're getting agent feedback. We're all of these pieces are starting to come together. And I think the mentality and the mindset shift, as much as the technology shift, is enabling that. And I'm very excited. I'm very passionate about that too.
I think it goes back to your point. Just thinking through that on the kind of the wave one stuff on wave one, that wasn't even possible. So even talking about that, right? And there was a lot of people that came from outside the industry that said, like you said, you guys are stupid, you don't know shit, and this is how it should be, and blah blah blah. And it was too soon, right? A lot of it, and a lot of that stuff fizzled out, and there was a lot of shiny object stuff within there too. Yeah, not solving real problems, but. Now that, like you said, I could see it. Now that we're here now you have these
industry people that are deep in the weeds on this now really, like you said, the mindset's changed and they're adopting a technology within their organizations, and they see it, across the whole organization, how important technology is. They're really, really embracing it. And they're saying, hey, what can we do next? And what can we do now?
Yeah. And I give a ton of credit. And that's part of where I learned a lot of it. We did a lot of work with Pivotal Labs, 6-7 years ago, and learned a lot about these different development methodologies, how to work and things like that. And I just feel like we've all kind of adopted a lot of this and brought it forward. So whether it's, working in cloud, new deployment methodologies, just even how we organize our teams and being cross-functional, being design focused, customer centric, all of that stuff, like that's been a revolution.
Oh yeah.
Like we used to have like 1 or 2 design people across the company. Now it's like every cluster of teams has their own lead designer, and we may have junior designers under that person. Like design thinking and things like that, and building software that's fit for purpose, and that high user acceptance rates, and just even the analytics that we have to put to it so that we can understand adoption, utilization, and that's not just with customers or with agents. We use that on our employees too.
Right. Totally.
It's like, hey, that's a great software we think we designed, but no underwriters are actually using it. So something is wrong.
Right.
So, but those mentalities and methodologies, I think, are powering. And I love working with you guys that way. Like that's been just such a change from back when I was in my PI days, working with the personal lines days, working with you guys. Like it was, we would huge spec sheets and stuff like that. Oh
yeah, totally.
Now it's like it's a conference call.
It's a conference call, a conversation.
You hear the clicking on both sides of the call because we're literally coding it up right there and launching it. We go. And, and that's where, when you talk about how Travelers wants to be different in this space, it's exactly that. It's being able to partner with folks like yourself and say, hey, if you have customer demand, if the agents that are on your platform want to engage with us that way, we're going to figure that out.
Totally. Right.
Like whatever it is, like you bring me enough critical mass of agents, we will be there with you guys. And we've made that commitment across the industry. Yeah. And it's pretty exciting, right? Like that's what we realized is trying to change how agents work is not the path towards finding efficiency. The path to finding efficiency is making sure that we're tied in tightly with the tools the agents have picked. And that has been a huge unlock for us.
That's so true. As opposed to making them do something that they don't want to do.
Yeah,
there are some other. I'm just going to say, there's some of your competitors.
You know what agents
don't feel that way.
You know what agents don't want to do? They don't want to go to travelers.com necessarily.
Right. No. Yeah.
Right.
Not unless they have to.
Not unless they have to. But if there's an applied Ivan solution that 6, 8, 10 carriers can all produce the same answer that they need.
Yep. They're going to use that solution.
So we need to be there.
Yeah, so true.
We need to be there because again, design thinking, building for the customers, our customers are demanding it. So we need to do it.
Yeah.
And also, honestly, it's more fun showing up to agent events and things like that when we're actually doing what they asked, as opposed to being the one saying, no, come to travelers.com. Yeah. Makes my job so much easier.
Well, we were talking about this before this podcast, but like I said, but hey, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's they, in their eyes, it makes sense. And it is, it's short-term thinking, and it is working for now in their defense.
But it's that idea of when you're looking at your corporate strategy, and I'm very fortunate to get to wear a strategy hat as well as some of the other stuff we've talked about, that when you look at your corporate strategy, you got to say, what do you want to win based on?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if the way that you're going to win is that you've built a walled garden, like unless you're Apple, that's probably not a great strategy.
Totally. Right.
Like there's no carrier that has more than 5, 6, 7% market share in commercial lines.
Yeah.
So if we all built our own walled gardens, think about how many different places an agent needs to go.
That's a good stat. Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Like, don't get me wrong. If I had 30% market share, we could have a totally different conversation.
Yep.
And our relationship with Ivans and Applied would feel very different. But we're 1, 2, or 3 in most of the markets that we compete in.
Yep. Absolutely.
At 5, 6% market share.
Yeah, that's wild.
So I need to work the way my customers, my agents want to work.
Yeah.
And not try to dictate to them how they work with us.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that's a mindset shift that takes tons of investment and time. And, the proof is always in the result over time. We're hoping that we're closing some of that gap and we're making up a difference. It's been the philosophy for years for us now, but you're rebuilding decades of technology, culture, motor memory, mental models, all that. But what's great has been partners like Ivans that are right there in the foxhole with us.
Yeah.
Right. And like fighting that same fight and having great partners and having others that are thinking the same way and getting that like-minded thinking. That's why the Big I conference was so much fun, right? And hanging out with Chip and those guys. Like it was fun because it was like a group of us that are like-minded.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thinking about if this industry gets better, we'll all get better.
Yes.
And the way I compete in the marketplace is Travelers has the best underwriters in the industry.
Right.
So my strength is my underwriting, my ability to select and price risk.
Yep.
Why then do I need to compete with an Applied or an Ivans to tell an agent how to interact with me?
Yeah.
I want to get as much in the top of the funnel as I can to let my world-class underwriters beat everybody else in picking the best risks and pricing them the best way.
Yeah.
That's how we win.
Yep.
And once everybody around here got their head around that, it was like this epiphany moment of like, wow, we can win by going on our strength and not trying to build these artificial barriers to competition, but say, this is how we win. Like, so that's my stump speech.
No, it's awesome. And it's, tell me, there was a press release that went out a while back that about you and Google, right? And some of the stuff you guys were doing together. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, love to talk about it in the abstract more than the specific. We did a press release, and Hannah Karna is an amazing individual. You've worked with her too, the concept of what we are looking for is exactly what I was just talking about. Right. And it actually ties into the ecosystem and platform play is that, whether it's a Google or an Amazon or a Microsoft, we view these hyper-accelerator companies as our opportunity to accelerate the insurance industry as a whole through the next digital phase, the next change. And there's a reason that Ivans was one of our, you were one of my first calls when we were pulling all this together.
Like 100%.
Like, Reid, we're not doing this to beat you. We're doing this because we want you to come with us.
Exactly.
And whatever solution we go down, whoever we partner with, that's going to be part of the conversation of we want to help make the industry better, not go and invent the next Ivans.
Yeah.
But like you and I were talking about before we started the pod, it is the time, it's the moment for the next Ivans. And the next Ivans should very well be the current Ivans, just the next generation of it. But we are at a critical tipping point for this industry around data transmission, data transformation, and working with some of the biggest data companies in the world makes sense if they can provide for us things that are going to help make the industry better. I'm not looking for I'm not looking for an unfair advantage. I'm looking to press my unfair advantage by streamlining everything else. And so this is where the more we can get through the funnel, the more we can partner with our agents to get the risks through faster. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to quote a middle market policy. That's insane.
That is insane.
Like
insane.
I can show you examples of the ping-ponging back and forth for chasing data and how annoying and obnoxious it is to the customer and things like that.
The whole process is painful.
Process. It's
for everybody.
It's not a good process.
Right.
And this is back to it's the time for the next Ivans. It's the time for the next Accord. It's the time for the next ISO. As an industry, and I say this all the time, but as an industry, we used to come together to solve industry problems.
This is true. Keep going.
At some point, collaboration was replaced with competition.
Fair enough.
And now, as an industry, and I'm not saying this just as part of Travelers. This is Bill's opinion, right? As an industry, we compete on everything. For this industry to be successful going forward, my personal belief is we've got to find the places where there is not value created, where we are creating artificial hurdles that make things bad for the customer, make things bad for the agent, and make things bad for our frontline underwriters.
So
And
true.
how do we streamline, simplify, and take the goo out of that mess? That's why, take a Accord. I said on the Accord board, right? Take a Accord. That's a perfect example of where we all had proprietary applications.
Yep.
If somebody wanted to apply for insurance, they might have to fill out a dozen different applications so that each carrier could have their own special application. And the industry came together, funded a body, and said, you know what, let's build an industry application that we can all agree to.
Yep.
That seems so fundamentally simple.
Yep.
But today, getting the industry together to do that same thing, I don't know if you could do it.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, you brought it up. I'll just say when it comes to Accord, though, I mean, they took a different path. Let's just say, right? And I think it's funny because I was involved in a group that a lot of people don't know about that kind of just dismantled over time, but they invited me to come into this group. And this group was built literally to displace Accord.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there was a bunch of people that were upset about Accord and they went for profit and they did all of this. And it was kind of a joke. Like the group was frankly, it was a waste of time because they were not going to ever execute on it. They just wanted to sit there and just bitch about it, but not make any moves to actually solve the problem. You're 100% correct. We as an industry have to come together, get past all that bullshit. The past is the past. And let's solve some of these problems.
Just be comfortable that we are still going to compete every day.
Yeah,
but
100%.
There are places that we can collaborate and cooperate that will make it better for the industry, that don't violate SEC rules or things like that. But that, and I joined the Accord board when Bill asked me. I joined it because of the same mentality of the people that got in the shadowy room that you were in to try to replace it.
Yeah, exactly.
And my belief is that some of the institutions that make up our industry have so much value to them. What we've got to do is help steer them better.
Yeah.
And not just replace them. There are people in shadowy rooms right now talking about replacing ISO, replacing Ivans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. 100%.
But the reality is that there's so much work that's already been done by these industry bodies that we should probably first look to see can we fix them? Can we help them get better?
Yeah.
Can we improve them? Because I do believe that is possible. And it's about redefining mandates and redefining remits and really just going after the next generation of prizes and bringing the new technology in. And in defense of Accord, and not that we won't turn this into an Accord debate, but in defense of Accord, some of the things that they changed that people didn't like have actually enabled them to modernize the company in some ways that had they not,
right,
we would be having a different conversation about the failings of Accord.
Oh, fair enough.
So
totally.
There's a two sides to the story, and that's the only piece of and the same with Ivans was sold, ISO was sold. And part of that was because I don't think the industry wanted to continue to fund into some of these bodies the amount that was going to need to be funded in order to modernize and get them to where they needed to go.
Yeah.
We're at another inflection point where either we've got to come together to figure out how to fund it, or the funding is going to come from somewhere else.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's the thing, to your point, the reason why that group drove me freaking batty was nobody wanted to talk about fixing the problem or said problem, let's just say. It was all about replacing it.
Yep.
But they weren't taking steps to do that either. Well, but it was just like, okay, so what are we doing here,
You're
guys?
going to replicate the problems that already exist.
Exactly.
Like you're going to spend a whole bunch of money, and you're just changing who owns it.
Right. Exactly. It's stupid.
And honestly, if I went down my diary with you and talked about who are the outside folks that I meet with the most, it is you guys at Ivans, it's Accord, and it's Verisk ISO.
Yeah.
Those are three groups that I spend a tremendous amount of time with, because I believe in the insurance industry, and I believe that we need to give back to the insurance industry to keep making it successful for the next generation that's coming behind us.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I know that sounds cheesy, but I just believe that I've made a very good living. I've had a very good life because of this industry. And I feel an obligation to make sure that the group that I hand it down to doesn't get this pillaged hollow shell of a company and an industry.
So let's talk about the golden record.
Yeah.
Love this conversation. Explain to the audience, what is the golden record? How would you explain that to the audience?
So the cleanest, clearest analogy that I can make is something that comes up every few years in DC in the health care industry.
Yeah.
Right. And it's this idea of the portable health record.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that there's nothing dumber than the fact that when you start with a new doctor, the first thing you're handed is a clipboard with a mimeographed form that's like got crooked lines and everything, where you're supposed to write out your entire medical history and your family's medical history. Like that somehow on the spot in this waiting room in the 5 minutes before I see the doctor, I'm going to have perfect recall of every medical thing that's ever happened to me or a member of my immediate family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one, that's bad for healthcare, because that means you're meeting with doctors that don't have the right history. And the other is it's stupid. It's really dumb. And so, there's been a number of pushes, and I'd say some large hospital groups have actually made pretty good progress if you Google it, around this idea of a portable health record, which is you fill out the forms once and they follow you wherever you go. Yeah. We've talked about it. It's, there are concepts of like blockchain or distributed record kind of to it, where it's like,
I believe, by the way, for the record, I believe this is actually the only place where blockchain could actually impact our industry.
and honestly,
there's other places, but this is real.
It isn't even real blockchain.
Yeah,
it's distributed ledger, because you don't need all the production. No. You don't need all that weird blockchain stuff on top of it. You just need this concept of it's really the infrastructure of you have an owner, you have a custodian.
Yep.
And you have people who are exposed to different parts of that record.
Yep.
So the idea is for insurance, and particularly commercial lines, I think there's a place for it in personal lines, but I actually don't think the risks are nearly as complex. But when you get
the personal lines, to be fair, the personal lines is an issue because of the PII stuff. It's really
way more challenging. And there just aren't as many risks.
Yeah.
Right. So most people are going to have, unlike yourself, most people will have 2 cars and a house, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Like,
right.
You for your personal stuff may need this golden record to keep track of everything. But that's a whole podcast in and of itself. But the idea is on the commercial line side, where we may routinely get 100 vehicle fleets.
Yeah, totally.
We may get multi-hundred physical locations where we may get thousands of employees, like all of this information, and where we have professionals in some of these companies that are risk managers, and their job is to know this stuff.
Yep.
The idea that even in an industry that complex and that sophisticated, we're still doing basically paper applications.
Yeah. Right.
It feels very outdated.
It is.
It's so the concept that we've been talking about this since I met you is this. I think the idea is as an industry, the ability to come together and create these near perfect records that are managed and curated by the customer. One thing that this will settle is the age-old debate of who owns the data.
Yeah.
Which the Chip and the Big I guys are on the same page as me of like, there's only one real answer. The customer owns the data.
Yeah.
We are all privileged to get to see their data. But the idea is that we have to get to these self-managed, near perfect record sets.
But I'll just say that's a problem in and of itself. Technically speaking, that's a huge mountain to climb, because pulling that data out of all of your systems if they want. If they ask.
Well, and part of the reason that we started down this path is because of things happening in the EU and in California.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you didn't like this idea when we first talked about it until I started talking about the California privacy laws. And like, I watched the light bulb come on behind your eyes of like, oh yeah, because in California, if you want your records struck, companies have to do that.
No, they do.
You know what's really hard for us? Figuring out how many times we've replicated your data inside our systems. And it's just as hard for agents. And, the reality is we're not there yet, but someday this is a class action goldmine.
Yeah.
And luckily I still have my California bar card. So.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right.
So if you ever want to
good to know, brother.
Yeah, whole other plan. But the idea of this risk that hangs over the industry and honestly is something that gets talked about regularly in legislatures in every state, in Washington, D.C., and around the world of data privacy, data protection. Yeah. The best thing we can do, my belief, the best thing we can do as an industry is to try to get ahead of it and start to at least aspire to this idea of a golden record.
I think it's good conversation. It is a monster. And I've literally talked to groups about this.
Yeah.
Like standing up in front of groups of agents,
Yep.
carriers, technologists in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. Everybody likes the idea of it,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of pushback.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, forget about all the technical challenges and what that means
Yep.
in our systems and whatnot, and building it and accepting it and doing all that. Because there's a lift there. It's a
Yep.
monster. But it's do I, as an agency, am I okay with my customer having all of their data to be able to pick it up and give it to somebody else, right? And they don't like that. The broker, they really push back.
Oh,
I talked to a bunch of them, and it depends. It's funny when you first bring it up, they're like, that sounds amazing, because if there was this golden record, well, that means that when I get somebody, I can quote it. There's a lot of benefit. But when they think about, well, wait, if they're already my customer, hold on, I don't know how I feel about
But this goes back to, we were talking about carriers in the same way of, like, if I'm building these walled gardens to keep my business, do I deserve to be in business? Like, there is a certain point where you got to start to question. Travelers was, if not the first carrier, one of the first carriers to adopt giving loss runs electronically.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Carriers to potentially, I'm not saying that this is factual, but my hypothesis is that carriers only gave loss runs in PDFs to slow down, because the only time you ever call to ask for a loss run is when you're going to shop that business.
Yeah, right.
So carriers only produce PDFs of loss runs. They would not give agents electronic files.
Exactly. Yeah. Why? Right. Why would they need them otherwise?
But you've created a tremendous amount of downstream work on a number of parties.
Yep.
In order to try to keep 1%, 5%, 10% of your business, because they're just going to look at it and go, it's too much work.
I mean, to your earlier point too, you're talking about, 5, 6, 7% maybe across this industry,
but like
a market share.
But like, can you have a sustainable, successful industry?
Yeah.
That is premised on the fact that people don't move their business because it's hard work.
Yeah.
Not because it doesn't make sense to them, not because it's not to their financial advantage, to their protection advantage, but just because, man, dealing with insurance is a pain.
But, it's funny having these conversations with these brokers, and they're pushing back on what I said. And I want to just say to them, like, but wait a second here. Aren't you all about the relationship? And you'll sit there and freaking talk my ear off about how you have the best relationships and you have the best this, that, and the other. And that's why your customers love you. What about all that?
Oh, totally. When we talk about it, the focus tends to be on submission, new business.
Yep.
But remember, one of the most time-consuming parts of our industry in the commercial line space is the renewal process.
Mm-hmm.
Where, like, our internal joke is we refrisk the customer on renewal, because the risk can change so much with the schedule changes and all of that.
Oh yeah.
We basically make them fill out an application, a new business application, the equivalent of a new business application at every renewal.
Yep.
Like, how does that make sense?
Right.
How is that in anyone's best interest? And again, so one tenet of my argument here is the regulations and this data protection and data privacy, because I actually do believe in that personally.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is around expense. And we are an expensive industry.
Oh, yeah.
And if we don't start finding smart places to take expense out, some competitors are going to come in and show us how to get that expense out.
Yeah.
So whether it's money coming in and buying up carriers and ripping out expense, or it's, new entrants figuring it out, like we are way too expensive as an industry. Having one of the better expense ratios, I can say that. But we are too expensive as an industry.
Yeah.
And if we don't figure it out, somebody's going to figure it out for us.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us want to be part of an industry that is being solved by outsiders, that is tearing expense out and taking out things that actually provide value to us or the customer.
Yeah.
So figuring out things like this, like eliminating renewal expense or substantially eliminating renewal expense, would be huge.
Oh yeah. I mean, the golden record it's huge, just even on the underwriting side, and there's so much you can solve with it. It's, what, it's funny because I spent a lot of time talking to Dr. Hannah Karna about this. And I said to her, I mean, I always I'm real about all this shit.
Oh yeah.
I said, Hannah, because she was just on me that, hey, Ivan should do this. Ivan should solve this for the industry. We're Switzerland. We already have the carriers. We already have the connectivity to the agents, this, that, and the other. Totally makes sense. But what I said to her is like, how do we make money?
Right.
Anna? And like, how do we make money? And sorry, folks, but we are a for-profit business. Okay. We run a business to make money. Okay. It is what it is. All of your businesses that you got that are listening right now, unless you work for a nonprofit, you do the same. And so, but like, it's a huge mountain to climb, very expensive, and very, very long tailed, right? How do we make money? And I haven't figured that out. If there was a way for us to make money on this, okay,
and that's
we
why,
can make the investment. But that's what's so hard.
And that's why looking at hyper-accelerators as part of the solution, who actually make money on the storage and the compute costs around data, potentially could be part of that solution. I'm not saying I have it all figured out.
Yeah, fair enough.
But you got to look at how different entities get compensated, how they view making money.
Yeah.
And,
right.
And if your business model is I sell storage of data and compute against that data, I can't figure out how to solve the puzzle without that being one of the puzzle pieces.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And then you go to people who transmit data, like an Ivan's, and you say, well, you have some subscription, like there is a remuneration. You can't build the whole thing.
Right.
But you have to be part of this because you own the pipes and you get to charge the fee for using the pipes. Yeah. So there is an incentive in there for you.
Well, there has to be a toll for this toll road. I'm sorry, there does.
There has to be.
It doesn't have to be massive or whatever, but there has to be a toll for the toll road. And that's what I've struggled with is who's going to pay for that?
Well, the idea is that the entirety of the cost of the industry would come down
100%,
and then it needs to move to where not dollar for dollar, but some percentage of that would flow back to the people providing the solution. And the other is the people who provide third-party data, right? Like who validates, enriches, augments data.
Totally,
that would be part of the solution. Those folks would need to be part of this because they would have a key part in this. So it's this idea of how do you, without violating like competitive practices and things like that, start to build a coalition of the willing of people who have skin in the game on this already, or that by doing this and partnering in it have a potential to get unfair advantage around those that don't participate.
Right.
And I haven't figured it out. I haven't solved for it. I'm still going to have my stump speech about it. I'm still going to corner you every time I see you. But there is something that before I leave this industry, I would love to figure out how to get this going, even on a micro level.
So I'll tell you what we're doing at Ivan's. We're actually having an executive meeting later here at Travelers. By the way, we have a bunch of people here, whatever. And we're going to get into this, but where this starts, I think, and where we're actually starting with this at Ivan's is we want to solve the first problem in this industry, which is identity.
Yes.
So we are actively building that and building identity in that.
That's a critical prerequisite to all of this.
All of it.
Right. Yes. If I can't master the data, the rest of it is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And that's where.
And that is a pain for us. We are building it because it's a pain for us internally. Like it's just too painful. It's just a mess. And so we want to solve that first. If we solve that, then I think we can go there.
And that's the momentum you start to build, right? Because if you solve that, then you start to say, is there some minor enrichments that we can do that everybody needs? Like NAICS.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Like it's just like, okay, so if I've identified all the entities in the world, can I at least put the classifications that go with that entity onto the record?
Yeah.
And that's how I think we get there. I don't think
that's a whole nother. I don't podcast in and of itself.
But I think
NAICS and the classification stuff, it's a mess, man.
But my vision on this isn't a big bang.
Right. Totally. It can't be.
It's a series of improvements towards a better.
Right.
And then we pick off something like loss histories or something like that and say, is there some way to do loss histories and partner with somebody who collects loss histories and make that available in a way that attaches to the unique identifier that you guys are creating, that attaches to a classification that we've built. And I think it's, we've got a 5,000 piece jigsaw puzzle and all the pieces are black.
Right.
But I do think that if we as an industry lean into it, that we can solve the problem.
I think it's just that it's going back to your point.
We have totally lost everyone, and there's no one still listening to this podcast, by the way.
No, you'd be surprised. People love this stuff, and it's good. I mean, it's deep stuff, and it's real problems that exist within our industry. Like people that truly religiously listen to this podcast are people like you and I that are just deep in the weeds within this, and they get it. But like going back to your point about the collaboration with the industry, I think we need to bring back the collaboration.
Totally.
I think you're right. And we've lost that. And, we've lost that in like the last 5 years. It's not like we lost it 10, 20 years ago. It's fairly recent. And I think we need to come back together as an industry and start solving these problems together once again. Right?
And I use the term co-opetition all the time.
Yep.
We've got to figure out where we can collaborate. It's safe. It makes sense. We all benefit. And we need to stick to our guns that there are certain lines we will not cross, because that is where we compete. That there is, we have got to be ruthless when we compete.
Yep.
And we have got to be open-minded and, really buy in when we collaborate. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think human beings are able to have this kind of dynamic in a number of places in their life. Like, so it's not unique. Like I can have a great friend that I go and have beers with and then want to kick his butt on the golf course.
Totally.
Like this is not like, this isn't an impossible mindset shift, but I do think that it's something we've got to figure out. And I don't know who's going to lead it. I don't know who's going to drive it, but all I'm saying is I'm on the bus when whoever starts driving, because I'm in.
It's an interesting thought, but I think we need it as an industry for these types of things, just like identity. Hey, if we all came together, but to be fair, people have tried to come together in the past and fix some of these things.
Yep.
But going back to the conversation, however long ago it was in this podcast, about the different waves, I think it was just too early.
Yeah, the tech wasn't ready.
The tech wasn't ready.
There was some big, and I would argue that the golden record technology isn't ready either. That doesn't mean that we couldn't start.
Yes,
but there are pieces that don't exist yet that we'll need before we get to the end. The bet is that that'll happen. But yeah, there were other post Ivan's attempts to come together on some of this stuff that did not go well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
some of that is the motivation of individuals that are participating or leading. Like you have to really figure out how to get past some of that. And I don't know what that is, and some of it is that people like getting in rooms and talking.
Yeah. It's funny. I was yesterday, 2 days ago, it doesn't matter. I had a call with somebody from the media. I'm not going to name who or what. And they're looking at, as part of their publication, doing something specifically on Insurtech all the time. Okay. And so they reached out to me, and among others, they might even reach out to you, and and they're like, so what do you think we should talk about? And blah, blah, blah. And this and the other. It's a good conversation. But the question that was interesting was, who's the audience, Reid, that's going to read this and be interested in it? And this is my answer. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. My answer was everybody. Yeah. Because technology now has become so important across the industry, not at the distribution, not the care, like everybody. Yep. This is what we do. So insurance technology for the insurance industry, Insurtech, everybody's interested in this, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
We've hit a point. So couple of just supporting. I 1,000% agree. Insurance was an early adopter of technology.
Yep.
Right. Like I'll try to see if we can swing by and see like the giant records, the giant discs, like the 30-foot wide, like
I've never done any of this. I'm doing an insurance history Hartford tour.
But insurance companies were some of the earliest adopters of technology.
Yeah, totally.
That also means we have some of the longest legacy technology debt of any industry as well. But the idea is that insurance was a very early adopter of technology. And so, that is a critical component of all of that. But that means is that insurance business and insurance technology are that you can't unwind those. Mm-hmm. Like the business needs technology, and obviously technology needs the business. But and my team and what I get to do at Travelers, and I always joke I have the coolest job in the world, is I get to straddle that line between both, and get to work on the business side, but focus almost exclusively on how technology and things outside are changing our business, and that's really exciting. And again, only a company that has 30,000 people gets to create a job like mine. But it's this idea of like, I'm not a technology person. I'm actually a business person.
Yeah.
And the idea though is that we have got to figure out how to use technology as a tool to accelerate our business.
Yep. And
that is not unique to insurance, but it is something, to your point, that everyone in insurance cares about technology.
Mm-hmm.
They all, I mean, good grief, the amount of chat GPT conversations that I have in the halls. And I think everybody wants to talk tech and wants to understand, like, how is this going to change risk selection, risk profiles, all of that kind of stuff. Like it is, and as underwriters, right? Like we have to understand technology to be able to write the businesses that make up the economy, who are being challenged and changing from technology, as manufacturing shifts. That's one of the biggest industries we write is manufacturing. And think about how much technology is changing that, or what's the future with autonomous vehicles or things like that. There's so many, but we all have to care about technology. And the thing that I'll kind of close that thought with is one of the realizations that Travelers kind of had over the last few years and really over the last decade is the pace of change in our business has continued to accelerate, but not nearly as much as the pace of change in technology has accelerated.
Yeah, fair.
And companies that keep a wall up between business and technology find that those two groups are drifting farther and farther apart, because it is harder than ever to understand the complexity in the insurance industry, right? When you start talking about the modeling and some of the data science stuff going on, and then when you start talking about all the cool stuff going on the tech side and the advancements, like if you don't make a concerted effort to keep those two groups together, intertwined, working closely, like they just diverge, because there's just so much on the business side that you could go do and never think about tech, and vice versa. So Travelers in particular has done a lot around whether it's technology education for business people, business education for technology people. Like you've got to keep challenging that. And so I completely agree with your thought of like anyone in insurance should care about Insurtech.
Yeah.
All right. Bill Devine, folks. What an awesome individual. It's really interesting stuff. I love the story about how he fell into insurance. I love everybody's story on that, but it's just kind of funny. Free parking gets you into insurance, right? It's funny stuff. But Bill is just so connected in the industry. He knows so much, knows so many people. And it's also interesting for me, his Southern California roots and us going to some of the same surf spots and whatnot. It's pretty cool. Bill's a cool guy, from going to creative writing to wanting to write screenplays to becoming an attorney and then to falling into an insurance, right? And he's done a lot within our industry. And, I love Bill's confidence in where they stand in the industry and how they really embrace technology at Travelers. Now, I'm going to say this. Travelers is one of our top customers, not just financially, but they're one of our top customers because they really act as a partner. Like their team, guys like Tim Lewis, Sean Romalo, Bob Jenkins, Bill Devine, all these guys, they're open arms and say, hey, guys, show us what you got. Show us what you're thinking about. What are you doing here? It's really true. The stuff he's talking about is very, very true. And Bill is just very knowledgeable, and he's a fun guy. I spoke on stage at the Insurtech event in Savannah with him. We just had a great time. It was fun stuff. But look, Bill Devine, awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. I think we're going to try to go a level deeper with Bill. We're gonna set up another call. We're going to do another episode because there's a lot more there with Bill. And by the way, I got 11 puppies here in my house. If you hear this crazy background noise, that's what's going on. They're all fighting over a big ball right now. So sorry about that. But stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.